Okay, great. Um, Welcome to our first monthly online meeting. We need to set this up correctly. Right, good. We want to talk firstly about why we are actually here. OmnAIView is in a really early stage of development, and therefore currently information is stored in the GitHub discussions or internally in the company. This leads to very different knowledge bases of people that are developing with OmnAIView. It can't be expected that everyone actually reads all the discussions, all the issues, everything that's happens in the repository. So we want to bridge that gap of knowledge between the people, and for this we created the monthly OmnAI meeting. This is the first one, and it should fulfill some goals. The first one is that everyone who is interested gets a summary of all the things that happened in the last month in the repository and in the project itself. You will get information about the architecture that was decided and the design decisions that were made, about important discussions that happened, and about important issues that were solved. It also should allow you to interact personally with all the contributors, so the group dynamic will be improved. And to reach these goals, we decided on the 3 points for the agenda. The first one is a little presentation about the important decisions that were made and the issues that were solved. The second point is the current improvements that are made in the software, and the current version of the software will be presented. And after this, you can ask questions you have about the project, or we can discuss your opinion on the project, what could be better in the project, what issues needs to be solved, and what are the next steps. For the meeting today, we have a special goal, which is that everyone who starts with the project gets a little introduction into the project. So this is not only for the people that are currently here, but also for people who will start with the project and will look at this video for the first time. We have a bit of background before we started this open source project, which should be presented. And so the agenda for today will be that I will hold a short presentation about all the things that are important for the project now, what happened before we started the project, and what is our current vision. And I will present the current software that we have, and after that we can ask questions and discuss about the project. Are there any urgent questions before we start with the presentation? No. Okay. I will shortly share my screen. So hopefully you can see the presentation. Okay, great. I need to change some things in the setup of the recording shortly, and then we can start. Great. So welcome. Does everybody see the presentation? Yeah? Great. We will first start with the project introduction. And I think the main question that actually arises when people hear OmnAIView or OmnAIScope or OmnAI is what actually OmnAI means. And we in this company decided that OmnAI stands for the technical system that provides devices to collect physical data. This means something like a multimeter, something like an oscilloscope, and a platform where data is visualized and analyzed. OmnAIView is the GUI to receive, visualize, and analyze this data that is received from this physical devices. The core vision behind this, why we are doing this, is that everyone should get information about any physical systems with just one system. Why do we want to do this? Is that the first point is the more information you have, the better the decision you can make. So if you have a problem and you have no information about it, it's really hard to decide how to deal with the problem. The more information you have, the better is the decision you can make. And right now, there's no system that actually provides this for physical data. So, for example, in a university, you have multiple physical devices that measure data, and for each device, there's a software. And you don't have like two devices that connect to the same software. So every time you want to measure something, you either have like a whole physical device with no GUI and you have to press physical buttons to actually work with the device, or you have for each device a separate interface and you always have to learn this interface. And this interface does not provide many features as it was only built for this one little measurement device. We wanted to change that. And to change that, we first started to think about an actual use case where this is a problem. And our first use case, as the company is in the automotive industry, we wanted to measure oscilloscope data in car repair shops. They can't really use oscilloscopes nowadays because they're mostly really hard to understand, they are hard to use, they're really big and are not really handleable in a car repair shop. So our minimal setup was that we needed an easy to use oscilloscope, we needed an easy to use software, and we wanted a plug and play solution that would be easy to develop and easy to test. For this, we built our first device, which is the OmnAI-scope. The OmnAI-scope is a mini one-channel USB oscilloscope that synchronizes with other OmnAI-scopes and can be used per plug and play. The OmnAI-scope is this small, like it's as big as my finger, and can be used via USB connection to the PC and via BNC connection to the voltage source. The first software we developed was an easy and fast C++ software where everything was in one code base. We worked on this project for a few years, and the output was actually an easy to use oscilloscope front end that works like an oscilloscope. We have an available beta version of the OmnAI-scope in the auto-intern shop, but we don't really have an expandable code base. So the goal of actually measuring with different devices in one software and analyzing data in this software was not really reached. So we needed a solution for this, and this is where the project came. Our idea was that this has to be more modular. You don't have to have everything in one code base, so you have to split it up. On the left side, you can see the devices, which are OmnAI scopes or EFA probes or something like that. All of these devices are connected via a USB connection to a backend, which runs on a server, which could be the laptop of a client, which could be an external server, which could be a little Raspberry Pi even. Via WebSocket connection, these backends communicate with the front end, which is OmnAIView, which we are currently developing. And in OmnAIView, the user can actually interact with the data, he can analyze the data, they can visualize the data, and the analysis does not happen directly in OmnAIView. The analysis is handled via the backend and runs on a separate analysis server. Therefore, people can write their own backend for their devices, and they can write their own analysis for their use cases. Our minimal setup for this builds on the background that I already introduced. So our first device that we want to integrate is the OmniScope as a physical device. We want car mechanics as the first user group, as this is something we are already familiar with. We need a modular C++ backend. We need an easier to main front end, and we need some kind of analysis, and everything should be open source. This is where our open source project started. So the easier to maintain front end was the first thing we wanted to develop open source, as the submodule for the OmniScope is currently closed and can be used in the backend, so the backend can't be built locally, and analysis without visualizing data does not make much sense. So the Angular front end was the first thing we decided on to be open source. In this open source project, we have an organization which is the OmnAI-Project organization, and it holds all repositories that are used for OmnAIView. I wrote them down because I wanted to give a little introduction which repository is actually for what. So OmnAIView is our main repository. The OmniScope data server is the backend of the scopes. It can be used on Linux and on Windows, but it can't be compiled locally because of the submodule. We included a dev data server, which is a minimal data server that all contributors can use to actually test generated data via a WebSocket connection. So the dev data server provides data like sinus and rectangular waves through a WebSocket connection. We provide a dev analysis server, which is currently not implemented as it is not sure how analyses are integrated in the front end. And we provide an OmnAIView Python front end, which is able to receive data from the OmniScope data server and the dev data server, visualize the data, and then send it to a minimal mathematical analysis via REST API. We provide this minimal example as it is an easy way to demonstrate the concept that we want to implement for OmnAIView. All these repositories will be documented later on in the project, but they are currently not because the project is just in an early stage. I wanted to also introduce what else the project does contain, as it does not only contain the open source repositories. We have a Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook channel where this video will also be published. We have an OmniScope website. It contains information about the hardware part of the project and how it's used actually in the from the car mechanics in the car repair shops. Internally, we are developing more hardware devices. We have this Python front end and the dev analysis server, which will be included. This is more of the part for new contributors than for people who are currently here, I guess. But I think it is important to document how to actually start with OmnAIView after you receive all this information about how the project was built. The short answer is read the README, because everything I'm telling right now is the current status of the project. in a 3 months, in 4 months, maybe in a year when you see this video, this could be way different from the setup I am telling right now. So reading the README, building the project with the documentation that is in the README is the easiest way to start. How do you start when you see this video right now or in a month? We currently have a vision.md that gives you an overview of the features for the project. You can use that to get an idea what actually should be built. And then you can create an issue with your ideas. Creating an issue before you start with a PR is a great way because we can already discuss what can be implemented and what isn't really in the vision of the project. And no one else starts to implement things when you already created an issue for that. So there are no PRs that are like twice in the PR section. Where can you ask questions about the project? I hope that this will stay the same for the whole project, is the discussion section. It provides a place to ask questions, but it also is a place for idea, design decisions, and announcement of the project. You can contribute to the project when you read the contribute.md. I think this will also change with time, so using the information that is in the contribute MD when you see this video is probably the best way. You can test the app with the dev data server if you don't have an OmnAI scope. If you want an OmnAI scope, you can buy one in our auto intern shop. This is also linked in the OmnAIView repository.
Hey guys, at this point in the meeting I showed a video of the current state of the application. As our video recording did not work correctly, I started this video to show you the current state in the YouTube video as well. We have this little toolbar at the top where you can click on analysis and you will receive console.log outputs for the analysis. There's no functional code here, it's only the console output. It's for testing and setting up a minimal analysis example in the Electron code. You have the help button, which provides the information about the app. So you have the information about the Electron version, the Angular version, the license, as well as the company name. You can navigate to our support website and you can open the developer tools. You can connect to the OmnAI scopes via the load devices list. This will send a REST request to the backend. You will receive the UUIDs of the scope and their color. The color means the LED color of the scope. You can click on Start Data, and the easiest way to receive data is to click on Random Dummy Data. This will show you random dummy data in the graph. You can switch between the current time and the relative time of the timestamps. You can also receive data from the OmnAI scopes. This currently has a small bug where the timestamps don't update with the actual time of the measurement. And you could import CSV data. So you can select a file from your file system, which has to be an CSV file that could have been measured with the old OmnAI scope C++ software. And when you select this file, you can select a file from your file browser and can import it into the application. And that's it. that is everything that currently is possible with the software, and in the next weeks we will update you with new features.
We currently have 3 interesting discussions in the repository. The first one is 42, which provides the data source server structure. This was discussed a few weeks ago and is now fully developed and presents the server structure, how data sources are integrated in the software, what is the flow from a data source to actually be shown in the graph, and how all of these components communicate with each other. 27 is the essential elements of a good PR. This is great for new contributors, especially for people who are starting with GitHub or are in the first open source project, and it is a discussion that describes how a good PR should be, what elements a good PR should include. 50 is the state handling of data sources. This is how the different states between receiving a data source and visualizing data from a data source are handled. This is a newly developed concept, and it is great to read if you're starting with the project, and it is great to read if you want to develop some kind of structure about the data sources in the project. Our goals for next week are definitely a better documentation. We want to update the vision MD. We want to create an architecture file where the architecture is not only documented in discussions, but there's a file that actually documents the correct architecture that is decided on. We want to document the design of the project. We will try to answer all the questions about the project, and we'll try to set them all up in this discussion section. We try to find a great way for PRs, a workflow for PRs. Currently, there was the problem that sometimes PRs include the same features. So people working on the same features are creating PRs at the same time, and it is not sure which PR should be included. And people are wasting their time on features that are already implemented. And we want to create a setup CI and tests so that it is automatically tested if something breaks features, if something breaks the UI, if something even breaks the build process. That it's from my point of view. I hope this is a good introduction to the project. And now it's time for questions and feedback about the project. Your turn. Does anyone have questions about the project? Okay, great. Does anyone have feedback about the project? I am pretty sure that at least calling him with his GitHub name, der Zip, has a bit of feedback about the setup of the project, if you would like to tell.
Feedback on the setup, what do you mean by that?
I mean, okay, for us, this is the one of the first open source project that we're building. For me personally, it's the first one that I manage. And knowing which questions people would have about the project and which setup they need to actually understand the vision, to actually understand what features they could implement, um,
Mm.
is not trivial. And I think you have a good insight as an external contributor to the project, what
Mm.
documentation may be really important for the setup.
Mm. Yeah, I think inside the GitHub repository I already asked some questions and we
Mhm.
also already discussed some points. What like I'm wondering about is why we need so many files to build this project. Like
Mhm.
it's a bit of a basic question. Like why do we need to use Angular with so many files and our result is just HTML with one graph and some variables in the background. I think it's a bit overwhelming to use such a big tool for just a small software.
Mhm.
Um, I think that could be also one question from outsiders who maybe like work with front end and back end development from like if they work in this field and see what do we want to do. It's a simple graph, but it's a hell of a software load to to accomplish it. Maybe this could be yeah
Mhm.
explained a bit more.
Um, we use Angular as for a few reasons. That so many files exist, I think, is actually an Angular thingy. So it comes with the framework. Um, Also, the visualization of the graph has its own library and is not trivial as it maybe looks in the little HTML file. Um, we personally, as a company, choose Angular as we are familiar with the framework. We have senior developers who can build projects in Angular, and therefore reviewing PRs and setting this project up was easier. Um, we built the last GUI in C++, which was like the core opposite of an Angular project, as it is really, really small, but needs a lot of maintaining to actually build a good GUI. Angular makes this a lot easier um, and has design features and also easier features to actually work with the graphical interface. Um, I think that are the main reasons why we choose Angular. Um, I did implement a minimal setup in Python, but from my experience, um, it is easier to build a minimal setup in another language, but building a whole software with graphic design where you have to actually use components that all look the same, where you have some visual elements like animations, hovering over some buttons that change their color with that, is in basic languages like C++ or Python or even pure JavaScript way harder than to use a framework. Although the framework, when it first is set up, comes with a lot more files. Does that help with that question? Or does it answer the question?
Yeah, hopefully.
Great. Does anyone else have questions or insight to the project? Okay. Oh, oh, Timo, sorry. You can just unmute yourself and ask.
Okay, one question. Are there any design guidelines in integrated GUI elements?
We are currently using Angular material with a red design
Sorry.
palette, which is the which implements Google material design elements. We are not using our own CSS files for that currently, but there is a style that we want to implement, but it's not documented right now. I
Okay.
think we should document it in the next weeks.
Yes. There was a discussion about some buttons, like a play button, pause button, save buttons. Are these features to implement, or
the play button, stop button are features that should be implemented. We already made a pull request for that, but we kind of messed up the data source interface for that, so we have to create a new one. I think the best way to actually implement this is to set up an issue that describes this and reference the discussion that was made about those buttons, and then implement these buttons step by step. Does that answer your question?
yes?
Great. Okay. Other questions or feedback? Okay, then I think that's it. Thank you for joining the meeting. I hope you got a bit better insight into the project, and thank you for joining.